I blamed my husband after he punched my sister at her baby shower. Minutes later, 52 guests, and I realized a shocking truth that made me thank him. My husband approached my 8-month pregnant sister at her baby shower and punched her in the stomach. She folded in half and collapsed backward into the present table, causing 52 guests to shriek. I threw him backward, yelling, "What is wrong with you?" while my mother called 911, wailing over an assault on a pregnant woman. My father and brothers pinned my husband against the wall, and I hit his chest, calling him a psychopath, while my sister lay on the floor, holding her tummy and crying because something was wrong. Her lover was looking for blood, and everyone was shooting while my grandmother was experiencing chest pains from the shock. My aunts grabbed their children and fled, while I dropped below my sister, trying to feel the baby kick, but she kept slapping my hands away, crying, "Don't touch it. It hurts too much." The neighbor, who was a midwife, tried to assist, but my sister curled into a ball, pleading not to touch her stomach. My uncle was on the phone with his lawyer, telling him we needed to bring charges for attempted murder of an unborn child, while my sister's mother-in-law fell and had to be placed on the couch. My sister wrapped her arms about her tummy so tightly that no one could get close, crying because she knew something was wrong inside. "Look at her stomach where I hit her," my husband cried as he struggled against the men who held him. And I wanted to murder him until I saw it. My sister had a huge dent in her stomach that wouldn't heal. That's memory foam under her dress, not a baby, and I can prove everything she's been doing. I approached my sister before she could stop me and felt around the dent. My hands got numb from pressing on the foam borders and Velcro straps where my nephew should have been. She's been buying different-sized fake bellies online to fake the advancement, taking ultrasound photographs from pregnancy forums and photoshopping her name on them, and cheating everyone out of $32,000 in medical bills for appointments that never happened because I checked with every OB in town. I kept pressing on the damaged foam as my sister tried to push me away, and everyone began groping at her tummy, discovering more straps and padding beneath. I followed her after she stated she had an OB checkup yesterday. She went to a pub and drank for 2 hours before buying 3 additional fake bellies at a costume shop downtown. My sister was crying and shouting at him to stop, but he didn't listen. My grandmother appeared as if she was ready to faint. My husband showed us her laptop after she had left it at our house. Search history for realistic pregnancy bellies, how to fake morning sickness, pregnancy symptoms by week, and what to say at a baby shower. "But here's why I had to stop this today," my husband explained as he struggled against my brother's grip, sweat running down his cheeks. "I saw her in the hospital last week following a teenage patient around the maternity ward, and surveillance tape shows she has been attending the teen pregnancy support group for 2 months while pretending to be pregnant." My mother was sobbing as my husband showed us pictures from hospital cameras of my sister trailing behind a young pregnant girl who was constantly alone, sitting next to her in the cafeteria, and walking her to her car. She befriended this girl who has no family, discovered she's being induced tomorrow morning at 5 a.m., and yesterday purchased a car seat and nursing scrubs while reviewing tomorrow's shift schedules to identify the window when the nurses change shifts. My sister had informed everyone she was giving birth at a non-existent birthing center, intending to leave tonight and return the next day with a stolen child she'd claim was her own. She'd even tried fabricating birth papers and purchased a breast pump and formula to make feeding the stolen baby appear legitimate. In addition, she had been taking hormones to stimulate lactation. The foam belly turned entirely sideways, and my mother ripped off my sister's dress, revealing the entire prosthetic device tied around her waist. Everyone was yelling, and my sister's boyfriend backed away from her as she searched for an escape like a trapped animal. My cousin was on the phone with police, explaining the fraud and planned kidnapping, while my aunts calculated how much money they had given her for bogus medical bills. "You ruined everything," my sister yelled at my husband, taking off the false belly and tossing it at his feet. "That teenager's a drug addict who doesn't deserve a baby, and I would have given it a perfect life." She headed for the door, but my father and brothers blocked her route, forming a wall. I watched my sister's face shift into something I hadn't seen before in 33 years of knowing her, as if a mask had finally fallen off. And none of us were prepared for how far she would go to accomplish what she desired. She broke away from my father's clutches and went straight at my husband, her nails extended like claws. My brothers snatched her in midair and pushed her down on the living room carpet. She was kicking and shouting that we had ruined her beautiful idea, and the false belly lay there damaged and twisted. My husband continued to call for everyone to listen to the hospital tape while my sister thrashed on the floor. My cousin had contacted the police 5 minutes ago, so the sirens were already getting closer. My sister's boyfriend stood paralyzed behind the couch, staring at the foam prosthetic as if his brain was unable to process it. 2 police cars showed up, and officers stormed through our front door, as my sister attempted to crawl to the back exit. My cousin gave them her phone, which contained all of the screenshots my husband had emailed of the purchases and hospital security footage. The officers stared at the false tummy on the floor, before turning their attention to my sister, who was still fighting my brothers. They took out handcuffs while she cried that the teenage girl didn't deserve her baby. She alternated between weeping about how we had betrayed her and threatening what she would do when she got out. The cops read her rights as they dragged her to the police car, with all of the neighbors watching. My grandmother was gripping her chest on the couch, and my aunts were fanning her with napkins from the present table. The investigator who arrived stated that they needed to contact the hospital immediately regarding the teenage patient. My husband provided them Maya Flora's name, and they immediately called in to ensure her safety. Within an hour, the hospital had transferred her to a guarded floor with guards stationed outside her door. They obtained an emergency protective order from a judge that same night to keep my sister away. According to the security footage, the investigator stated that my sister had been following this girl for 2 months. But then another cop approached my husband and told him he was being arrested for assault. Everyone began yelling that he was defending a baby from being taken, but the police responded that attack is assault. My spouse hid his hands behind his back while I searched our checkbook for bail money. He spent the entire night in a holding cell while I contacted every lawyer in our phone book. Nobody wanted to take on this bizarre case until I found one who agreed to meet us in the morning. I did not sleep at all, and arrived at the courts at 5 a.m., with $5,500 in cash for bail. After reviewing all of the evidence, the lawyer concluded that my husband did, in fact, save the baby from being abducted. He believed we could have the charges lowered to a misdemeanor, but my husband would still face some penalty. While we were at the courthouse, my sister's boyfriend arrived at our home, utterly wrecked. He continued wondering how long she'd been lying because he had painted the entire nursery yellow last month. He told his entire family they were having a kid and purchased a $2,200 crib. I showed him her laptop, which included her search history from over a year of fake pregnancy research. He threw up in our bathroom when he discovered she had been taking hormones to cause her breasts to leak milk. My mother contacted me crying since Channel 8 had already broadcast the news of the attempted kidnapping. Our last name was all over the evening news, and she couldn't leave the house without being questioned by reporters. The grocery store clerk inquired whether she was the mother of the lady who attempted to take a baby. Dad had to take time from work since his co-workers were gazing and whispering in the break room. The detective called and requested me to accompany them while they searched my sister's apartment for additional evidence. We discovered 3 notebooks full with information about Maya Flores and her daily routine at the hospital. She had jotted down what the girl ate for lunch and which bathroom she used the most. My sister took shots of Maya walking to her car from across the parking lot. She had spent months studying this unfortunate child, as if she were organizing a military operation. The detective discovered receipts for the nurse scrubs and a forged hospital ID badge she had ordered online. During our investigation, I discovered credit card statements with my name on them that I had never opened. My sister had exploited my social security information to open 3 credit cards and max them out. She'd done the same thing with our mother for an additional $25,000 in bogus charges. The detective stated that identity theft charges would be added to those she was already facing. We had to submit police reports and freeze our credit as everything else was falling apart. 3 days later, Maya Flores went into labor and delivered a healthy baby girl in the hospital. Security guards stayed outside her room the entire time, and Sofia Morales from Social Services was also present. My sister was correct in one regard. Maya lacked family support. However, Sofia was now assisting her in applying for housing assistance and figuring out how to be a mother. There's something extremely unpleasant about my sister's calculating nature, with all those notebooks recording the poor girl's restroom schedule and lunch selections. Makes me wonder what more she was planned that they haven't discovered in her flat. The baby was perfect and safe, and my sister was in jail, where she couldn't harm anyone. We assumed that was the end of it, but my sister's lawyer stated that she wanted to proceed to trial. She intended to argue that she was performing a public service by removing the baby from an unfit mother. The prosecutor arrived at our house 2 days later, carrying a stack of papers as thick as a phone book. She lay out all of the charges against my sister one by one on our kitchen table. The attempted kidnapping of a minor's child took up the most time. Then came the allegations of fraud, identity theft and stalking, which added another year. My husband sat across from her, holding his own tiny stack of paperwork for his assault charge. Given what my husband had done, our lawyer insisted that it was the best possible outcome. The prosecutor agreed to reduce the charge to misdemeanor assault if he pled guilty, and accepted whatever penalty the judge imposed. My father contacted me that night from the emergency room because his chest hurt and he couldn't breathe properly. The doctor claimed it was a small heart attack caused by stress and kept him overnight for monitoring. He continued asking the nurses how he could have missed all of the warning indicators that his daughter would do something so horrific. Mom sat alongside his hospital bed, crying and clutching his hand, as machines beeped around them. My sister's ex-boyfriend called the next morning and asked if I could come to their apartment. He was packing her belongings and discovered 3 additional fake pregnant bellies in their bedroom closet. Her penmanship indicated that they were varied sizes, 6 months, 7 months, and 8 months. The receipts proved she had been purchasing them for over a year, rehearsing how to wear them properly. He showed me recordings on her phone of her trying out different walks and stances in the bathroom mirror. There were comments on which clothes best concealed the straps and how to sit so the phone appeared natural. My grandmother hadn't left her room in 3 days, and when we knocked, she didn't answer. Mom finally used her spare key and discovered her sitting in the darkness, staring at nothing. She had provided my sister $5,500 in pregnancy vitamins and medical bills throughout the previous months. The shame of being duped by her own grandchild was eating her up from the inside. Our lawyer called with more unpleasant news regarding what he discovered when looking into my sister's online activities. Over the course of 2 years, she had joined 13 different pregnancy forums under aliases. Each account had taken ultrasound photographs from real pregnant ladies and modified them with her own information. She'd taken other women's pregnancy stories word for word and submitted them as her own. The lawyer printed hundreds of documents detailing how she studied real pregnancies to enhance her falsehood. 2 weeks later, my husband appeared in front of the judge, pleading guilty to misdemeanor assault. The judge considered all of the information regarding why he punched my sister, but concluded that violence is never appropriate. She sentenced him to weekly anger management classes for 6 months and 120 hours of community service. My husband nodded and signed the documents without disputing, knowing he was fortunate not to face jail time. I went to the courthouse 3 weeks later for a hearing on my sister's case. Maya Flores was also present, with her newborn daughter napping in a carrier across her chest. She appeared very young sitting on that seat, maybe 17 or so, with black circles under her eyes. When she saw me, she approached and thanked me for preventing my sister from taking her kid. Her voice shook as she described how terrified she was to testify, but she wanted justice. The baby made small noises, and Maya gently adjusted the blanket around her tiny face. I could see why my sister picked her because she was alone in court, with no family there. But now she had Sofia Morales, the social worker assigned to assist her in adjusting to life as a mother. The psychiatrist's report on my sister arrived in the mail 2 days before her next hearing. It stated that she had pseudopsoriasis delusion condition, which was associated with antisocial behavior. The doctor stated that my sister believed she deserved a baby more than unfit mothers. She viewed teenage mothers and women battling with addiction as unworthy of their children. The paper was 25 pages long and detailed how her thinking rationalized her plot to abduct Maya's baby. It made me ill to read how she had convinced herself she was doing something honorable and right. Mom and Dad engaged a financial advisor to determine how much money my sister had stolen from everyone. When they tallied together all of the credit card fraud, the total was about $65,000. They began selling items and drawing from their retirement savings to repay family members. Dad couldn't look anyone in the eye at family dinners and was always apologizing for raising someone capable of doing this. The embarrassment was destroying him more than the cardiac troubles since he felt guilty for not noticing it. 3 weeks after her incarceration, my sister wrote me a letter from jail on yellow legal paper. She claimed I betrayed her and would never forgive me for destroying her life. The entire letter blamed everyone else for not realizing that Maya did not deserve her child. She wrote that teenagers who become pregnant are selfish and irresponsible, and do not deserve to be mothers. She claimed she would have given that baby a beautiful life with 2 parents and a nice home. The final line stated that she was doing the right thing, but we were all too ignorant to recognize it. I threw the letter away and tried to forget about it, but 2 days later, my husband was scheduled to begin his community service at the downtown youth center. The judge ordered him to spend 120 hours teaching children about anger management, which felt strange given that he had attacked my sister. He came into that first session, with 12 middle schoolers staring at him, and began telling them the entire tale about the baby shower. The youngsters sat there, mouths open, as he described how he had followed my sister and found her scheme to take a baby. He demonstrated how rage can occasionally defend individuals, but violence always has consequences, even when it is justified. When a child asked if he regretted punching her, my husband responded no about stopping the kidnapping but yes about using his fists. When my husband mentioned discovering better ways to deal with perilous circumstances, the program coordinator watched from behind and nodded. After 3 weeks of sessions, the kids began to speak up about their own anger issues, and my husband improved his ability to help them. Then Maya contacted me, crying, because someone showed up at her apartment and claimed to be her brother. She said his name was Finn, and he'd been missing for 4 years due to drugs, but she watched a news item about my sister attempting to abduct her baby. He stood outside her door with flowers and a plush animal for the infant, expressing his desire to make things right. Maya didn't believe him at first, but Sophia, the social worker, conducted a background check and discovered he'd been clean for 2 years. Finn worked in a warehouse and had his own apartment, and he continued showing up with diapers and formula until Maya agreed to let him meet his niece. Meanwhile, our entire family began coming to therapy together, with the exception of my sister, who was still in jail. The therapist made us sit in a circle and discuss how we felt betrayed by someone we had known our entire lives. Mom grieved every session about missing the warning signs, while Dad blamed himself for raising her incorrectly. The therapist repeatedly stated that we were all victims of my sister's lies and manipulation, and should not blame ourselves. She stated that persons with my sister's illness are skilled at concealing their actual selves and deceiving those around them. We spent 6 sessions simply absorbing the shock of learning that someone we loved could plan something so terrible. Then my sister's ex-boyfriend sued her for emotional anguish and fraud. His lawyer handed us documents proving that my sister had been using hormones to make her breasts leak milk and induce mood swings. She had spent $8,500 of his money on baby supplies and forced him to inform his entire family about the pregnancy. He demanded compensation for the therapy he required, as well as the money he had lost while preparing for a phony baby. The lawyer claimed he had a good case because my sister admitted to lying about everything during jail phone calls. 2 months after being arrested, I was required to go in court and testify before a grand jury. They forced me to tell the entire tale about the baby shower from the beginning, while 25 people gazed at me. When I got to the stage where I felt the foam belly dent under my palms, I started shivering and had to get some water. The prosecutor showed them images of the false tummy, as well as receipts for the various sizes she had purchased online. I testified for 3 hours about everything I'd seen and heard that day, including how my sister's expression changed when we apprehended her. The grand jury took less than an hour to indict her on all counts, including attempted kidnapping and fraud. Meanwhile, Sophia continued to work with Maya to organize her life with the new baby. She assisted Maya in filling out housing aid applications and enrolling her in community college job training programs. Maya wanted to become a dental assistant so she could support her daughter without relying on others. Sophia brought her to the WIC office to get formula vouchers and assisted her in applying for childcare assistance so she could attend class. Finn began minding the infant while Maya went to appointments, and they gradually created trust between themselves. But things at home got worse since I couldn't stop thinking about my husband striking my sister. Despite having saved that baby, I kept seeing him pull back his fist and smash her stomach. We'd be having supper when I'd remember the sound of his fist hitting the foam and get ill. I'm attempting to figure out how my sister's thinking operated. She actually took hormones to stimulate her body's milk production. That's a bizarre combination of forethought and hallucination. He noticed me flinching when he moved too quickly, and ultimately admitted we needed assistance. We found a couples counselor who specialized in trauma and began meeting weekly to go through it. The counselor said that my mind was torn between appreciation and horror, which was understandable given the circumstances. Then the news coverage revealed more victims we were unaware of. 3 different women called the prosecutor, alleging that my sister had also stalked them during their pregnancies. One woman said, "My sister showed up at her prenatal appointments asking weird questions about the baby's health." Another said, "My sister followed her to the parking garage after a birthing class and tried to get her phone number." A third woman had screenshots of her sister joining her pregnancy Facebook group under a fake name and asking for her address. My uncle hired his own lawyer to initiate a civil lawsuit in an attempt to recover the $30,000 that my sister stole. The lawyer explained that criminal restitution would take years, but civil court may move faster if we had sufficient proof. He began gathering receipts and bank statements from everyone who had given my sister money for fraudulent medical bills. The number increased as additional family remembered paying her money for medications and doctor visits that never occurred. Then my sister did something unexpected. She sacked her public defender. She stood up in court and informed the judge that she wished to defend herself because everyone was against her. She said the public defender was part of a plot to make her appear insane when she was truly attempting to save a baby. The judge ordered another psychiatric evaluation to see whether she was competent to make the decision. The psychiatrist spent 4 hours with my sister over 2 days, reviewing every tape from our jail visits. Mom had her first panic episode 3 weeks later at the grocery store, when a woman she didn't know approached her and asked whether she was the mother from the phony pregnancy news report. Mom dropped her basket and dashed to her car, where she sat shivering for 25 minutes until she could drive home. Dad discovered her that night sitting in the dark kitchen, crying about how she couldn't face people anymore. Mom described waking up at 4 a.m., and the doctor prescribed anxiety medication the next day. Her heart was beating, and she felt as if she could not breathe. She began taking the medications, but they made her weary all the time, so she stopped attending her reading club and yoga classes. Meanwhile, Sofia Morales continued to meet with Maya and her brother Finn, who had turned up after witnessing the TV report. Finn had been clean for 2 years and worked in construction, but he wanted to help his sister because she had missed so much of her life. Sofia connected him to her husband, Henry, who owned a security company and required dependable employees for nightly shifts at office buildings. Finn accepted the job and moved into a modest apartment near Maya so he could monitor the baby while she attended appointments. My husband reached the halfway point of his 120 community service hours and returned home gushing about this youngster named Leo, who reminded him of himself at that age. He was teaching basic self-defense at the youth center, but most of the time he just listened to the kids talk about their home troubles. The anger management instructor saw my husband was different and began having him assist with the newer participants who were still upset. The second psychiatric evaluation revealed that my sister was competent to stand trial, but had narcissistic personality disorder with antisocial elements. The psychiatrist stated that she knew what was right and wrong, but she believed her own desires were more important than the rights of others. She suggested at least 5 years of intensive therapy, whether my sister went to prison or not. Dad returned to work after 2 weeks off, but came home early on the first day because he couldn't take the glances from his coworkers. Dad began seriously pondering his boss's suggestion that he retire early with full benefits after 29 years of service. That weekend, I was cleaning up the garage and came across a box containing my sister's belongings from when she stayed with us last year. Inside, there were written stories regarding international adoption and infants being sold to wealthy parents for $65,000 or more. There were notes in her handwriting regarding how to falsify adoption documents and which countries had the least oversight. She had bookmarked headlines about people being caught and emphasized the faults they had made. The prosecutor added it to the evidence file, claiming it demonstrated premeditation and that the kidnapping could have resulted in human trafficking. My husband's anger management instructor was an older man named Martin, who had previously served as a Marine and a cop before becoming a counselor. Martin began meeting with my husband one-on-one following the group sessions to discuss the distinction between defending and attacking others. He made my husband write down how he felt before punching my sister and what other options he may have taken. They worked through scenarios in which my husband had to use de-escalation tactics, even when he was aware that someone was acting inappropriately. The prosecution called me 2 months after my sister's arrest to negotiate a plea deal they were giving her, 15 years with the chance of parole, after 7 years, provided she completed psychiatric treatment and demonstrated true contrition. The alternative was to go to trial, where she might face 25 to life in prison if the jury found her guilty on all charges, including attempted kidnapping of a youngster. Maya was accepted into a GED program for young mothers, which provided free childcare throughout classes. The program met 3 nights each week, and on Saturday mornings at the community college. Finn changed his work schedule to allow him to care for the baby while Maya was in class, and Sofia assisted him in establishing a routine. Maya was resolved to complete her GED and begin the dental assistant program the following year. The baby was healthy and meeting all of her milestones, and Maya sent us a photo of her smiling for the first time. My sister's lawyer offered the plea deal via video call from jail, but she began yelling before he had finished describing it. She stated that she would not accept any settlement because she had done nothing wrong, and that the jury would understand she was attempting to save a baby from an unfit teenage mother. Her lawyer tried to explain that the evidence was overwhelming, but she fired him right away and promised to find someone who believed in her cause. The judge appointed another public defender, but my sister refused to meet with them and filed to represent herself again. The guards stated that she was not taking the anxiety medicine they had provided and was spending all of her time in the law library, researching cases where persons had beaten kidnapping accusations. She wrote letters to anyone who would listen, stating she was being punished for trying to assist a baby live a better life. Every Tuesday afternoon, the family therapist made us sit in a circle in her office, which smelled like vanilla candles and old books. She took out this chronology on a large whiteboard and began writing the times when my sister lied about stuff we had forgotten. There was the occasion 5 years ago when she announced she had cancer, and we all shaved our heads in sympathy until Dad discovered she had never seen the oncologist she mentioned. The therapist kept adding lies to the board, such as when my sister said she had been admitted to nursing school while actually working at a gas station. Mom cried through the most of these sessions, recalling how my sister would look at pregnant ladies in stores and request to touch their tummies. The counselor commented, "We'd all been in denial about my sister's problems, because facing them meant admitting someone we loved was capable of terrible things." On a Thursday, my husband concluded his last day of community service at the youth center, and the kids threw him a little party complete with homemade cupcakes. One child named Leo handed him a letter in which he explained how my husband's tale had helped him realize why he gets angry at times. According to the letter, when Leo became furious with his stepfather, he learned to count to 10 and walk away rather than beat him. 3 other youngsters also wrote letters, and my husband saved them all in his wallet. The youth center director asked whether my husband would return as a volunteer coach for their basketball team. The prosecutor invited us inside her downtown office, where the walls were adorned with legal degrees and images of her children. She spread out all of the case files on the large conference table and explained that the trial would begin in 3 months. My sister intended to represent herself and claimed she was performing a public service by targeting what she deemed an unfit teenage mother. The prosecution showed us motions my sister had made alleging Maya was using narcotics. Even though all of the drug tests came back negative, she cautioned us that my sister would try to portray herself as a hero who was rescuing a baby from neglect. Mom and Dad spoke with a real estate agent about their holiday property in the mountains, where we used to stay every Christmas. They had acquired it 22 years ago and fixed it up themselves, but now they needed the money to repay everyone my sister had defrauded. Uncle received $1,700, and my aunts received their respective amounts. Grandmother refused to accept anything, claiming she didn't want their money and just wanted them to heal. The house sold in 2 weeks to a young family with 3 children. I was picking apples at the grocery store when I heard a baby cry and looked up to find Maya carrying a cart with her daughter in the sling. Finn was with them, comparing formula pricing on his phone. The infant had plump cheeks and was wearing a pink onesie with the words, "Mommy's Girl" on it. The way they're dredging up all these old lies from 5 years ago makes me wonder whether everyone simply opted to ignore them at the time. The cancer narrative where everyone shaved their heads. How come nobody questioned that until Dad checked? Maya was exhausted, with black circles under her eyes, but she smiled at her son and made comical faces to stop him crying. She hesitated for a second when she spotted me, then Finn placed his hand on her shoulder and muttered something. We talked for a few minutes about the baby sleeping through the night and Maya taking GED lessons online. When I reached out, the infant grabbed my finger with the strongest grip possible for someone so small. Letters began arriving at everyone's homes, with my sister's jail number as the return address. She wrote to our aunt, claiming I was jealous of her and had turned my husband against her. She informed our cousins that my husband was violent and dangerous, and that they should keep their children away from him. Most of the family threw the letters away, or returned them unopened. But Dad's brother called, wondering if we had overreacted. Mom had to show him all of the proof again, including receipts for the phony bellies and stalking recordings. My sister even wrote to our old neighbors, claiming she was wrongfully imprisoned for being overly concerned about children's welfare. The prosecutor obtained recordings of my sister's phone calls from jail using a court order. We sat in her office, listening to my sister tell another inmate that she was going to collect her baby as soon as she was released. She depicted Maya as a useless junkie who did not deserve to be a mother, despite the fact that she had never used drugs in her life. In one call, my sister stated that she knew where Maya was now and would wait as long as it took. The prosecutor said that these calls indicated my sister's continued threat and that they would be used at trial to demonstrate her lack of remorse. My sister had painted pictures of newborns in her cell, which guards discovered during a search. My husband and I drove about every weekend for a month, looking at properties in different neighborhoods. Reporters arrived to our house to do interviews, and passers-by slowed down to photograph the location of the baby shower. The neighbors were courteous, but we could sense they were uncomfortable around us. We now discovered a house 40 minutes away in a secluded suburb where no one recognized our names. The moving truck arrived on a Saturday, and we packed everything while avoiding looking at the backyard where the gift table used to be. After months of silence, the grandmother finally agreed to give the prosecutor a statement. She was too frail to attend court, so they set up a video connection from her living room. She sat in her favorite chair, dressed nicely, and informed the prosecutor that she had given my sister $5,000 for prenatal vitamins and maternity clothes. Her hands shook as she presented bank statements and canceled checks. She explained that my sister had come to her house wailing over medical bills and wanting assistance to give her baby the greatest start in life. When the prosecution inquired whether she wanted the money returned, grandmother explained that she only wanted my sister to receive therapy and never hurt another family. Maya took her kid to the prosecutor's office for a trial-related meeting, and I was also present. The infant was 6 months old, could sit up by herself, and had begun to eat mashed bananas and sweet potatoes. Sophia came with them and informed us that Maya had not missed a single parenting class or physician appointment. The baby was the ideal weight, had rolled over early, and was already attempting to crawl. Sophia stated that in her 22 years as a social worker, she had rarely seen such a dedicated young mother. Maya studied for her GED test every night after the baby fell asleep, while Finn worked extra hours to pay for daycare. The prosecutor used photos of the healthy, happy infant to show the jury what my sister had attempted to steal. 3 months later, I walked into the courthouse for jury selection and saw my sister for the first time since she was arrested. She'd lost at least 35 pounds, and her cheekbones stood out sharply behind pale skin that resembled paper. The orange jumpsuit hung loosely on her body, and her hair was flat on her head rather than the lovely curls she was known for. She kept telling her lawyer she didn't need to be there, but the judge ordered her sit down 4 times before threatening to have her gagged. The prosecutor asked prospective jurors if they could be fair to someone accused of plotting to steal a baby. My sister continued shaking her head and mouthing the word nay whenever someone stated they could be objective. By lunchtime, we had selected 12 jurors and 2 alternates, and my sister informed the judge that they were all foolish. The next morning, opening remarks began, and my sister stopped the prosecutor 6 times inside the first 10 minutes. She stepped up, claiming that the prosecution did not understand how she was benefiting society by removing a kid from an unfit mother. The judge cautioned her twice before stating that one more outburst would result in contempt charges and ejection from the courtroom. My sister sat back down, but continued to make faces and shake her head as the prosecutor showed the jury images of the false bellies and stalking recordings. When her lawyer made his opening statement, my sister continued trying to take the microphone from him. 2 days later, I mounted the witness stand at 8 a.m. and did not leave until after 2 p.m. The prosecutor guided me through uncovering the foam belly at the baby shower and discovering all of the evidence my husband had gathered. I described pressing my hands into the damaged foam where my nephew should have been and heard my sister say she didn't think the adolescent deserved her child. My sister stared at me for 6 hours, not blinking or looking away once. Her lawyer asked if I'd ever observed indicators of mental illness previously, and I had to say no, even though in retrospect, there were undoubtedly things we missed. The prosecutor presented the jury the receipts for the phony belly, as well as screenshots of my sister following Maya to the hospital. I recognized my sister's handwriting on the letters about Maya's itinerary and validated the credit card she had opened in my name. When I finally stepped down, my legs shook so badly that I nearly fell. The next morning, Maya took the stand with her infant, who was nearly 9 months old. She mentioned meeting my sister at the teen pregnancy support group, and how she would always sit next to her and ask intimate questions. Maya's voice broke when she revealed that someone was going to abduct her baby the day she gave birth. She claimed she hadn't slept properly in months, and yet checked the locks 5 times before bed. 3 jurors were wiping their eyes when Maya described being 17 and alone, thinking my sister was being friendly when she was actually chasing her. During the testimony, the baby started fussing, and Maya rocked her while recounting how my sister learned about her induction date and job schedule. My sister's lawyer did not cross-examine Maya, so she slammed her hands on the table. My husband testified the next afternoon about following my sister to the bar while she was supposed to be at a doctor's appointment. He admitted that striking her was wrong, and he had already performed his community service and anger management. But he stated that he couldn't allow an innocent baby be abducted, and he knew the police wouldn't believe him without evidence. He presented the jurors with security tape he had kept of my sister stalking Maya for 2 months. My sister's lawyer questioned if my husband enjoyed beating a woman, and my husband replied, "No, but I'd do it again to save a baby." The jury debated for barely 3 hours, which our lawyer said was unusually short for a case this serious. They returned guilty verdicts on all 7 counts, including conspiracy to commit kidnapping and fraud over $10,000. My sister sprang up, yelling that they were all idiots who didn't see she was trying to assist that kid live a better life. The bailiffs had to take her out while she screamed about how Maya was trash and would damage her child. 2 weeks later, the judge sentenced my sister to 18 years in prison, with the chance of parole in 10 years if she completed psychiatric treatment. My sister laughed, saying she'd rather do all 18 than pretend she was wrong. The judge stated that it was her decision, but she would be committed to a psychiatric incarceration facility regardless. Within a month, my sister was transferred to a facility 3 hours away, where she was required to attend daily treatment sessions. Following her evaluation, the physicians contacted and informed us that her personality condition was severe and would require years of intensive treatment to correct. They said she still believed she had done nothing wrong and spoke about Maya's baby as if it belonged to her. Mom and Dad began attending a grandparent support group at the community center for families affected by crime. Dad stated it was helpful to hear other people's tales of their children doing bad things and learning to live with the embarrassment. After 6 months, Mom became a regular speaker, explaining to prospective members that loving your kid does not excuse their misdeeds. They even established a foundation to assist young mothers like Maya with child care and infant necessities. My husband was employed as a young baseball and soccer coach at the leisure center, where he used his anger management training to teach kids about emotional control. He would tell them about repercussions and making better choices without going into detail about what happened to my sister. The kids adored him because he understood their anger but taught them how to deal with it without causing harm. 1 year later, we all headed to the community college for Maya's graduation ceremony, when she walked across the stage in her cap and gown. Finn held the baby up so she could see her mother receive her graduation, as Sophia and Henry cheered from their seats next to us. The dean announced Maya's acceptance into the social work program, which begins in the autumn, and she pumped her fist in the air. How did Maya study for her GED as the baby cried at night? The way she combined education and motherhood while dealing with the pain of someone attempting to abduct her baby makes me wonder what kept her going every day. After the ceremony, Maya showed us her admission letter and class calendar while her daughter snatched the tassel off her cap. My husband and I looked at each other during the celebration and knew we were now ready to try for our own child after all of the therapy sessions. We'd spent months processing what had happened and learning how to trust again and resolve disputes peacefully. That weekend, Dad spent 6 hours at his desk, drafting and revising a letter to my sister in the psychiatric clinic. He showed Mom the final version, in which he said he loved her but couldn't contact her until she accepted responsibility for her actions. His hands shook as he sealed the envelope, and his mother drove him to the post office since he couldn't see through his tears. The wider family resumed little dinners, but half of the relatives refused to attend despite everything that had happened. Uncle hosted Thanksgiving with only 12 guests instead of the usual 40, but everyone genuinely spoke rather than faking. My cousin brought her new partner, and no one inquired about my sister, which made the entire meal easier. 3 years into her sentence, the facility called to tell my sister had finally begun attending group therapy sessions. The doctor stated that she admitted to needing help for the first time, and that this was the first significant progress they had witnessed. She wouldn't apologize or admit she was wrong, but she stopped saying Maya didn't deserve her kid. Meanwhile, Maya completed her first year of social work coursework while working part-time at the women's shelter downtown. She began hosting support groups for teen moms, using her own story to show them that they too could succeed. Her supervisor submitted a note stating that Maya was the best peer counselor they'd ever had since she knew what the girls were going through. My husband and I discovered out I was pregnant shortly after Maya began her second year of college. We chose the name Grace before we knew it was a girl because we needed something good after all of the darkness. When she was born, the nurse asked whether we wanted to fill out the birth announcement for the newspaper, but we declined. When others spotted us at the grocery store, they asked about Grace's aunt, and we simply told them she was getting the treatment she needed. We stopped explaining, making explanations, and telling the complete story since it was none of their business. 5 years after that horrific baby shower, our family established a new normal with weekly dinners and monthly game nights. We now had security cameras, and Mom kept the doors closed during the day, something we had never done before. Dad returned to church and found serenity by volunteering at the food bank every Saturday morning. My husband coached 3 different youth teams and taught youngsters how to make smart decisions when they were furious. I watched Grace play at the park and ensured she understood the need of setting limits and speaking out when anything seemed inappropriate. We taught her that family implies both love and holding people accountable when they cause harm to others. The doctor contacted last month to say my sister was making gradual progress but would need years of treatment before being released. We listened to the update and thanked them for calling, but we stopped visiting and writing back. Our family learned to recognize warning signs that we had previously missed, such as small lies and her tendency to play the victim. We stopped making excuses for people's bad behavior and began pointing out when things didn't feel right. Mom joined a support group for parents of adult children with personality problems and became the secretary after 6 months. She taught prospective members that mental illness does not excuse harming innocent people or planning crimes. Dad wrote in his journal every night on forgiveness, limits, and how to love someone from afar. My brothers checked in monthly, and we all went to therapy independently to deal with our own guilt and trauma. The extended family gradually reconnected, but with new norms around money, trust, and proof. Nobody gave financial gifts anymore, and everyone requested receipts when someone needed assistance with bills. Grace turned 3 last month and inquired why she only had one aunt while her peers had more. We informed her Aunt Rose was ill and required special physicians to help her recover. She accepted it as a child would and returned to playing with her toys without asking any further questions. Maya completed her social work degree and was hired full-time at the shelter, while Finn cared for their kid. They moved into a larger apartment near the college and began accumulating money for a down payment on a house. Sophia and Henry became like family to them and to us after everything they had done to assist. Our lives weren't flawless, but they were real, honest, and free of the deception we'd endured for so long.